This is Cult Confessions with Christy and Josie. Welcome to our podcast.
Trigger warning may contain themes of religious trauma and sexual abuse. Disclaimer: all information in this podcast is our opinion based on our experiences. We do not purport any of this content to be inherently factual and believe that each individual has the right to draw their own conclusion.
I'm Christy.
And I'm Josie. And today we are going to be talking about why we have chosen to describe the IFB or Independent Fundamental Baptist movement as a cult. A lot of people don't, and they just describe it as a religion or a denomination or a church. But we are choosing to call it a cult for some very specific reasons. So we have a list that we're going to go through of characteristics of a cult and just talk about some of our experiences that have led us to this conclusion. But Christy, when did you decide that it was a cult? When did you start calling it a cult rather than a church or whatever?
Honestly, not until recently. I feel like
Same.
after watching Let Us Pray and everything, and I don't know, I think that when you watch all of these different cults, you kind of draw comparisons and stuff. So yeah, but I just feel like, yeah, just recently I started feeling like it was more um deserving of that label.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I didn't start calling it a cult until, honestly, a few months ago. It's something that's pretty new for me to describe it as a cult. And I still even give it a little bit more benefit of that and say it's a cult in disguise because it doesn't look like a cult from the outside. Like, even though we have a dress code, we don't all have to dress exactly the same. Like, there are things that looking from the outside in, you probably wouldn't realize it was a cult because it doesn't really look like one if you don't know what you're looking for.
I mean, I feel like whenever you see people in super modest clothes, I
Right.
mean that was kind of the point, right? To make people look at us kind of thing
Yeah.
to show that we were different.
Yep.
And so I feel like we definitely had that vibe where it was we wore long jean skirts and
Yep.
never wore pants, and we wanted to stand out as being different so that people would ask why we were different, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but that does I feel like that gives kind of culty vibes too.
It definitely does. It definitely does. But it's like that boundary. Like, yes, we all had to wear long skirts and we had to dress, according to a certain dress code. But if you look at something like fundamentalist Mormons that are typically more accepted as a cult, like they all do their hair exactly the same way. They all wear the exact same dress. Like, it's
Hmm.
so it's disguised. I think it's disguised very well because when you're in it, you don't really think of it as a cult. And even when you're out of it, you don't always think of it as a cult. Like,
Yeah.
I've said, I've told people, even in the last few months, like I grew up in a cult, and they're like, "Ooh, what kind of a cult?" And I said, "An independent fundamentalist Baptist church," and they're just like, "That's not a cult." It's like, well, kind of is. So
Yeah.
let's look at some characteristics of a cult. So this comes from an article from Very Well Mind. So number one, absolute authoritarianism without accountability. I think we can say that definitely applies. So let's talk about the lack of accountability. It's very interesting, the balance of accountability within the IFB, because as the congregation, we are all very accountable to the pastor. Everything runs through him. Everything goes by him. He approves everything or disapproves everything. Like, your goal is to be appropriate to him and meet his standards. But the accountability for the actual clergy, for pastors, junior pastors, youth pastors, whatever, is really non-existent.
Yeah.
And so the IFB loves to talk about how it's not connected to other IFB churches. Like, there may be similar doctrine, but they're independent. They are functioning on their own.
Hmm.
But that means that you're accountable to no one. Like, you have no
Yeah.
structure of hierarchy. You have no
Well, they're
check and
accountable to God,
balance.
but
Right. Sure they are. Sure they are. Mm-hmm.
but I
But the
think they
fact
can
that the
kind of
only
say
one
whatever
who,
they want.
well, exactly, the only one who determines what God holds appropriate is the pastor of the church.
Yeah.
And that's not, like, that is authoritarianism. Because
Hmm.
if we can't talk to God like that, like, if we can't discuss the structure of the church or have an opinion on the structure of the church after we have talked to God about it, that doesn't really do any good. The pastor
Yeah.
still does whatever he wants and says whatever he wants.
So do we vote in the deacons?
I remember something like that. I don't know. I've never been an adult in the church. I think that was an adult thing.
Okay.
And I left when I was 18, so I was never an adult in the church. So I don't know if that's a thing or not.
I think we vote in the deacons, and the deacons are supposed to like kind of keep the pastor accountable, I think. But
Mm.
and then they kind of vote together for stuff usually too,
Okay.
but that's kind of I think how the system works. But yeah, the pastor itself I don't think gets like checked by anyone else other than God himself.
No, because even if we're saying that the deacons or the other leadership within the church is supposed to have that, like, account, like, that the pastor is supposed to be accountable to them, that still is not realistic. Like, that's still not what happens. There are churches out there where, like, the congregation is allowed to have a say in things or is allowed to vote on certain things or give their opinions to the pastor, things like that. But, like, that was never my experience. If we had an opinion that was different than pastors, if we had an idea that was different from them, or we just thought anything different, there wasn't any space to say that. And if you
Yeah.
disagreed with a decision that pastor made or you disagreed with something that he did, it sucks to be you, I guess. Like, there's nothing you
Yeah.
can do about it.
You just have to like leave and go to a different church probably.
Pretty much, yeah. And
Um
and oh, leaving is a whole separate thing.
I
Like, you are shunned if
I
you leave.
think that I've heard that with my church, Willamette, they anytime there was like a huge decision to make, they would have like a meeting after church on like Wednesday or something.
Mm,
And I I heard that the women weren't allowed to be in it.
it sounds right.
So it's like honestly wild like that's still a thing. Like
Right?
that women don't get a say in what
Yeah.
goes on. Um but yeah, I remember with like with the scandal at Willamette, that's what happened. Like my mom wasn't allowed to be in any of the meetings or anything.
Really?
Yeah. So,
All right.
yeah, but
That's a problem. I mean, well, it's not a problem to them because the women's place is in the home. Why would they have any, like, say or thought or opinion on the ongoings or the inner workings of the church organization? Like, why would we be allowed to form a, coherent idea about something that's been
yeah.
going on that's affecting us or our families directly? We're definitely not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, check one. Number 2, zero tolerance for criticism or questions.
Yep.
How many times can I check this box? Like, oh my goodness. I, dude, people were literally sent away for asking questions. There were people that were just completely outcast for just questioning rules. And I mean, I was a very rebellious teenager and I questioned pretty much everything.
I would say you were a curious teenager.
Yeah, hence the quotation marks. My husband looks at me. He's
Hmm.
like, you were never rebellious. Like,
Yeah,
you
like
are
what
such
did
a
you
goody
actually
two
do?
shoes. Yeah, honestly. He looks at
Hmm.
me. He's like, you follow every single rule, like, that makes sense. I can't believe anybody ever called you rebellious in your life. Like, you're such a
Hmm.
goody two shoes. It's interesting. I'm now a goody two shoes. I'm not a rebel anymore. It's kind of great.
Yeah.
But like I was as a kid, and that's the label you were given. So that's all that. Like first of all, that's problematic. Is if
Yeah,
you
well,
ask
if you
questions and you're
question
curious,
anything, yeah, you're
you're a
you're
rebel.
labeled, yeah.
Yep. And then I mean that kind of just sticks with you your entire time there. Like people don't want you to be around their kids. You're not a good influence. You're not a good friend. Like you're really isolated if you get given that label. And I mean, I had that experience like my senior year of high school, hardly anybody talked to me. I
Yeah.
had like my best friend, she would talk to me and she would eat lunch with me, and that was it. And everybody
Yeah.
else, like, just honestly, I felt like they hated me. Whether they actually did or not is whatever, but that's how it felt because that's the label I was given. I was a rebellious kid, and they weren't supposed to have anything to do with me. So, number three, lack of meaningful financial disclosure regarding budget. That's a big one. I have no idea how much my pastor made. Not a clue. And I've been talking to a couple of other people that have reached out since we've started doing this about like the difference between like churches they're in now and faith. And that was one of the like big eye-opening things is there are churches out there where the congregation, everybody knows how much the pastor makes and everybody gets a say in how much the pastor makes. And
That's
that honestly,
crazy.
that just blew my mind. I can't even
Hmm.
imagine. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got like a summary of like how much they
No,
make, what goes to what,
no, no.
any of that.
The most we like. I remember being in a service where he said um, that the church was debt free at one point, um, because someone had passed away and left their house to the church, and the church sold it and paid off like the rest of their mortgage or
Okay.
whatever.
Hmm.
So the church was debt free, and that was some financial information we were given.
Yeah.
I don't know how much like I don't know anything about the financials of the church.
Hmm.
Anything. I don't know how much the teachers are paid because the school is a ministry of the church. I have no idea. Like that
Yeah.
was all kept secret. The only thing I knew about finances was I was supposed to give 10% of my gross income to the church, and that was
Hmm.
tithing, and that was my responsibility as a Christian. That's the only actual numbers of like financial information I was ever given about the church.
Yeah. That and then offerings, obviously, it was like
Oh
give
yeah.
whatever
Like
God
yeah,
tells
after
you to
you
give.
tithe, like whatever God lays on your heart, give the extra. Oh my
Hmm.
god, that phrase drives me nuts.
And I
Mm.
just feel like I think some churches have gotten rid of like passing the little thing around and they just like leave it at the back of the church to like you drop money in if you
Oh
want
yeah, yeah, I've
to.
seen that. Like the
Because
offering
I feel
plate.
like that's like it's like a lot of pressure because it's like I know my family wasn't very wealthy and so it was like giving any money was a lot of money for us, right? And like
Yep.
I don't know, then someone just putting in like a $20 bill in the thing and then you're just like $1 and you feel kind of bad and it's like
Yeah.
it's like a weird like thing like where you feel like guilty if you're not giving any and like
Mm-hmm.
people can see that you're not giving any. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And like it's almost like you're really like told to give more than you can. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like more than you should.
Yes. No,
So,
there is so much pressure on giving, and it's really interesting because
the words, again, the words don't match the actions, because I remember pastors specifically saying, we don't want to pressure anybody to give blah 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 blah, like from the pulpit. He has the spiel he gives every time the offering plate comes around. It's, we don't want to pressure you to give, but whatever God lays on your heart, give, is
Mm-hmm.
essentially the gist of what he says.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
And then it's like a whole
so,
ceremony of like a song, and then you
oh
pass
yes,
this
that's
little
normally when the
offering plate.
special happens. Like, somebody will get up to sing while
Yeah.
you're passing the offering plate, or somebody plays piano or something.
Mm-hmm. And then you
And yeah,
pass this
so
little dish around.
yes, the offering
To,
plate.
yes, and there's like the classic offering boys or whatever, the people that pass,
Ushers.
like, yeah, the ushers that
The
pass
ushers.
the
My brother got to do
offering.
that. He was so excited when he got to be an usher for the
Hmm.
first time.
Yeah, it was a cool thing to do in the
It's a
church.
status thing. Like, it's another status thing. It's the same thing as like
Yeah.
singing a special or being in church
Hmm.
choir or sound booth or something like that. It's a status
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
I feel like a lot of
Only
times
men, by the way. Only men got to be
yeah.
ushers.
Oh yeah. The
I asked to be an
only men
usher.
could be like in control of the money part.
I asked to be an usher once, and I got like the
Yeah.
weirdest look. It
Except
was,
I do know secretaries that were like in control of finances and they kind of like pay themselves whatever they want.
oh, really?
Hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. We
Yep.
love that.
We do love
Wow.
that. We love the tea.
No,
Um,
we don't, honestly. It's ridiculous. Like,
yeah. There's so much that we're constantly getting bombarded with of like just like so much information of things that happen in churches and so many stories and stuff, which like we are so excited to like help others. But like it just gets like a lot after a while of just like,
it's heavy.
yeah, it is heavy and
It's also really
it's
eye opening. Like, this is kind of a tangent from like what we're talking about, but like, it's really eye opening to see how interconnected everything is, and how these churches love to say, "Oh, I am an independent church. I don't take money from anybody but the congregation who chooses to give whatever." That's no, that we don't choose to give. We are manipulated and coerced into giving. But they like to say that they're an independent entity, and they're not. Like, they, maybe fiscally they are, but doctrinally they are absolutely not. Every IFB church, if you go on their website and you look at what we believe, 99% of the time you are going to see something almost exactly the same doctrinally. Like, I will have to find some examples and we could talk about them later, but I
oh
have
yeah, we
seen,
should.
I
We
have
could
looked at
insert
so
like our
many.
old churches
Yeah.
too.
And they say like the exact same thing, the exact same wording, or very similar about the same things.
Speaking
Um,
of which,
oh, do tell.
speaking of our church's websites, I'm the face of the school for my
Yes, you
website.
are. Still. Like, what grade were you in when that was taken?
I was probably a senior when it
Okay,
was taken. But yeah, I don't know how long I've been because I didn't even check the website until this past year. And I was like, oh
that's
my God,
hysterical.
I'm the face of the school.
So,
It's just so
okay, what
funny.
that tells me is that they haven't gotten any better. Like, they haven't made
Hmm.
any changes, they haven't grown, they haven't
Yeah, I don't think they've
change their
updated the
uniform or
website.
anything like that.
Mm-mm. Because I don't even see like anything on there. Like when you click the school part, it literally just
Mm.
shows the photo of me and this other girl. Um, but they don't show like handbooks or anything. That's why we haven't been able to get handbooks
Mm.
because they
Yeah.
don't have anything online. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, I think that's so funny. I love that you are literally the face of an IFB school and you're an
Yeah.
atheist. Like,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
here for the irony, honestly. I think it's great.
I mean, I also like was the face for West Coast for a while too. So,
Yeah, because you went on
which West Coast,
tours.
yeah, West Coast Baptist College. It's like a IFB college that I went to
Hmm.
after graduating high school. But yeah, I traveled with them for a while. So, if you recognize me, it might be from traveling traveling around the country. And it's always awkward because I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I went on tour." And then secular people will just be like, "Wait, what? Were
Ooh, were
you
you
like
in
in
a
a band?"
band?
Yeah,
Like,
like were you in a band or something? Like, not really.
no, it's a little different.
Yeah, not that kind of band.
He fell upon his knees and cried, I am not one of these.
But
Not a fun one. Yeah. Okay, so back to our cult list. So 1, 2, 3, check. Check, check, check. Number 4, unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve
oh my
evil
God.
conspiracies and persecutions. I have so
That
much
one's
to say about
huge.
this.
That's
I have
huge.
so much to say about this. So let's talk about persecution. So I followed the church's Facebook page because I'm nosy, and Pastor
Hmm.
Rick Donnelly preached a sermon about the church being persecuted like 2 weeks ago.
We
Christians are
love to see
persecuted,
it.
I think was the name of the sermon. So yeah,
Oh
they
yeah,
all.
they're persecuted by their made up idea of people coming to picket the church.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah, there was a rumor going around at Faith that that there were going to be protesters,
hmm
which I mean I wouldn't be mad about.
whatever. Yeah, we would be fine with it, but
I'd be fine with that. I think it's
we
well
were a little bit
deserved.
annoyed because it wasn't
I was
us.
like, excuse me, who's planning this without us?
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
but like they completely made that up because there was a
Hmm.
protest at First Baptist Church in Hammond that went really well and got a lot of coverage.
Yeah.
And I watched the whole thing live. It was great. So
And then we were talking within our group
yeah,
about a
just within
lot of
our group,
things.
none of us go to Faith. None of us really have contact with people that still go to
Hmm.
Faith. Like, that's not something that would have gotten out. And then we heard about rumors at Faith of like being prepared to face the picket line or
Yeah, like
whatever.
they were throwing that persecution
They're literally telling on
bullshit.
themselves, though. They're telling on themselves, though, because they're saying, oh, this church that did a lot of bad things got had people protest
Yeah, that's
around
true.
it, and they're saying,
Hmm.
oh well, somebody's going to protest around our church because we did bad things.
Hmm.
You're telling on
Yeah, they're
yourself.
all worried over there, like, oh no, there's gonna be people like protesting and we're so
Yeah.
persecuted. Woe is us, blah blah blah. And it's like,
Oh,
no.
so even beyond like modern, or I guess like recent events, whatever, back when I was a kid, like actually in the IFB like doctrine, I believed so hard in persecution. I
Oh
believed that
yeah.
I was being persecuted. I believed for a long time that there would come a day when I would have like I would be shot or I would be burned at the stake because
Oh
I was a
yeah,
Christian
like a school shooting, someone comes in and they're like, "Do you
or a
believe
church
in God or
shooting.
not?
Yeah, no, I literally had
Is God
nightmares.
real?"
I literally had nightmares about a gun being held to my head
Hmm.
and being forced to say, "Do you believe in God or do you not?" And I would say,
Oh,
"Yes, I
like
believe in God," and I
martyr
would be shot.
being a martyr, the best prize, right? I don't
Well, and I'm not. I will say, like martyrdom has existed not just for Christianity, but for like people have been killed for their beliefs. I think we can
know. Oh yeah.
agree with that. Like in history, people have been killed
No,
for their beliefs.
they just made it seem like it was like some sort of thing that like we should be proud of doing, which like
Exactly.
for our faith, but we were like children. Okay, like we don't need to
Yeah.
be thinking
Oh,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, when I was having these
those
nightmares and
things.
stuff like that, I was like 9, 10.
Yeah.
Like, and that lasted forever. Like,
Hmm. No,
oh my gosh.
I totally remember feeling that way. And like
Yeah.
them preaching those things, like would you be able to like say that
Or
God
would you
exists or
be, would you
whatever?
be a coward? Like, would
Yeah.
you get shot? you should get shot. In that situation that I had, like, was having nightmares about, the right thing to do is say, I believe in God, I'm a Christian, and die and get shot. That is
Yeah.
the correct response.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's great. So,
So
okay, go ahead.
I feel like the whole persecution thing, they use it with everything with politics and all the things of just
Oh,
like,
yes.
oh my God, like we're so persecuted and I don't understand even how. Like, how are they persecuted? Because I feel like they're
They're not.
persecuting everyone else.
Yep. They like to make up persecution. And, like, I am not
Hmm.
saying that people who are unnecessarily cruel to Christians, that exists. I believe that that
Hmm.
exists. Not in the magnitude that they like to think it does. And they make it up. Like, okay, so we'll take the LGBTQ plus community, for example. They believe that they are being persecuted by the gays. And in reality, they're doing the exact opposite. They are the ones persecuting
Yeah.
gay people or queer people
Well, yeah,
for
I mean, they're
simply
like literally
existing.
just spouting bullshit lies
Mm-hmm.
of how like it's literally made up stuff. Like,
It is
oh
made
yeah, like
up.
the trans community are gonna go
Or,
into our kids' stalls and
oh yeah,
rape them. And it's like that's
the
not
gay
actually
agenda.
happening. It's not actually happening.
No.
Give
No.
me statistics. Like literally the people you should
They
be
are
afraid of
allergic to
are
statistics.
are straight men.
Yeah.
That's who you should be afraid of.
Yep.
That's who you should be keeping your kids away from. I hate that the Christians try to make it a whole agenda and make it this crazy wild thing when it's like it's not actually real.
Well, yeah,
It's
it's
just
they
it's like
have
a bunch
such
of
an
fear
agenda.
mongering.
It is. They have such an agenda that, like, they're being persecuted and everybody hates them, um and they push it on everybody else. Like, everything that they say about other people is what they're doing. Like, they talk about the
Yeah,
gay
it's like,
agenda.
do you want to
Like, the
know
gay
why people hate you? It's because you are trying to control everyone and trying to make us do and believe things that you believe. It's like
yes.
we will respect you when you respect us, right? Like we respect that you want to have your beliefs, but it's not
Absolutely.
okay for you to push your beliefs on other people.
No.
Like it's just not.
No, it's not. And so, like, we whatever agenda you want to talk about, like Disney has an agenda, the gay agenda, whatever agenda that they like to say exists. The gay agenda is literally just equality. Like, they want to get married. Like, they want to be able
Yeah.
to have a relationship with somebody they love publicly.
Yeah, God forbid other people want to get married. That's
Yeah.
like outside of your idea of marriage.
Yeah. Honestly, it's
Because
ridiculous.
somehow it affects you.
It doesn't affect them at all.
Mhm.
It only affects them in the way that they choose to be affected. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous. So, and then, like, the other part of this is unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies.
Oh my
So
God, yeah.
everybody's against us, nobody's for us, all of that kind of thing that ties into persecution. But,
Okay,
like, let's talk about conspiracy theories.
that and also I feel like we need to talk about how fearful we were of like the outside world.
Oh yes, yeah. Let's talk about that. I it was so scary. Anything outside of church was not protected. Like, you were not under the hedge of protection of the church, the
Hmm.
hedge of protection of the home that is blessed by God. God's hedge of protection around you only exists in certain places, in certain beliefs. And if you went outside of that, well, you were going to get hurt, or you were going to get killed, or, like,
You're
all
going
of
to
these
become an
bad.
alcoholic.
Yes, you would be a drug addict. I can't even tell you the amount of times that people looked at me and said, like, if you keep being a rebel, you're going to end up addicted to drugs. Not addicted
That's
to drugs.
crazy.
I barely even drink. I hate the taste of alcohol. I'm a
Yeah.
total wuss when it comes to that. Like, I don't enjoy alcohol. It's not fun for me, so I don't drink
Hmm.
very much. Like, it
Yeah.
That level of fear mongering is just disgusting.
So one of my closest friends, from after leaving the IFB, they're both atheists. And I remember telling them about like the very first time that we met them, how like terrified we were to go meet them. And that like I remember that she was like bisexual and like she might have had like an abortion or whatever, like the things that Nathan was telling me, and
The
how like we were kind of
horror.
like we were basically like I was pretty freaked out, right? And they were just like totally normal people. So
Yeah. Yep.
it was just like just such a wild thing, like because we're taught that the people outside of church are of the world, which is like,
Yeah.
I guess, evil.
That's
I
as
don't
bad
know.
as it gets. I mean, there is no middle ground. I think is it like that the black and whiteness is really
Yeah,
problematic.
I was about to say that. Yeah, like the one of the other things within like a cult is having that black and white thinking. And
Mm,
that's very, very much what it is. Like we were not allowed to have friends outside of like our IFB school. We weren't allowed to like be hanging out with friends like even at the jobs that we went to. It was
oh
very like
yeah.
holier than thou kind of thing where
Oh,
like,
incredibly so.
and it's
Like,
weird because it's like you're supposed to invite people to church, but then you're also like, hey, I can't hang out with you though. Like come to church, but
uh-huh.
like I can't hang out with you.
Not until you convert.
Yeah, it literally doesn't make sense, but
I remember, okay, so I got my first job when I was 16. It was like the summer before my junior year, I think. Um, and so I mean, like I've been working since as long as I could. And I worked at Arby's and there was a lot of public school kids there. And I just remember, um, being so hated on for that. Like everybody was so
mhm,
mad that I went out and got a secular job, and I was told by my teachers that I had to be really careful and protect myself and guard my
mhm.
heart because they would try to
Oh God.
influence me and because they would
Mhm.
try to, lead me astray
I
from God
forgot
and the
about that
church.
phrase. Like
Mm-hmm.
the guard your heart.
Guard your heart. Yep.
That's
But
crazy.
I needed money, so
Mhm. As we do.
yep. Oh yeah. Well, and I also like I knew at that point that like I was going to move out as soon as I could. So I mean, I started saving up money for that since like the moment I started working. If I wasn't
Yeah.
spending it on coffee.
Yeah. Um I just remember that that was like a huge thing, and um I don't know, it's sad though cuz it's like technically like if you believe in the Bible and stuff, like Jesus hung out with like the poorest of the poorest and like the worst of the worst or whatever, right?
Right.
Like he befriended everyone because that was the point of like reaching,
Mm-hmm.
like spreading the gospel and stuff and like saving people is
Right.
like being able to communicate with others and like be kind to others. But instead, it's
It's
very much
love.
like,
It's supposed to be all about love and loving people and taking care of people. And I still believe in that. And it's interesting
and
because we were so prepared for people to attack us. We were so prepared for people to
mhm,
come at us and be like, "Why are you a Christian? You can't be a Christian," because that was their persecution narrative. That's never happened to me. I'm gonna just say that
mhm,
like that has never happened to me. I have had
yeah,
nobody ever in my adult life come to me accusatorially and say, "Why are you a Christian?" I've had people ask like curiosity questions and be like, "Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think this?" and have a discussion about it. And
mhm,
just from a purely intellectual standpoint, which is not the same thing at all. I've never had anybody get in my
yeah,
face and be like, "Why are you a Christian?" ever.
yeah. But it sure does happen a lot the other way around,
Oh
like
yeah, I've had
of like
prior.
Christians. Yeah.
I've had people that people that are still in the IFB that have talked to me after I left and said, "Why did you leave? Why are you disobeying God? Why are you dishonoring your parents?" Very accusatorily, very hatefully. I've had those questions directed at me so many times.
I've had people just be like, "Hey, I'm so sorry that like this happened to you, but you didn't know the right God or you didn't go to the right church or whatever it is." There's always a but, right? Like of just
That's so
like
dumb. Like, you're still in that space. Like, you are still, when you're doing that, you're still in that space where you're trying to convert somebody. Like, you just can't have respect and love for that person as they are
yeah.
and accept that they have a right to their beliefs the same as you, because each person
Mm.
does. And that's still not okay. Like, to be pushing people like that, that's still not acceptable.
And that's part of the thing. It's like this bullshit about persecution when it's not real. Like it's literally not real. It's the other way around. Like
Yup.
we're getting persecuted by Christians. Like
Yup.
literally like places are trying to get Bibles like within the public school. When we have the separation of church and state for a reason. There
Yes.
was a
Oh my
reason why like
goodness.
our country started like they literally left England because they wanted
Mm-hmm.
freedom of religion. And that
Mm-hmm.
means freedom of all religion. Okay? Like it's not just a
And also
Christianity thing
freedom
only.
from religion. They love to say, oh, it's freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. It is
It's
freedom from
both.
religion. If you choose not to be a religious person, you have the right to do that. And they don't
Hmm.
agree with that.
That's like literally the point of like the US in the beginning, right? Like of just like getting away from the power of England or
Mm-hmm.
whatever and like the whole idea of religious like
I have a question for
persecution.
you. Were you taught that, or were you taught that it was because England was Catholic and that was bad?
I was taught, I mean, I've learned, or I don't know, I was taught that they left for freedom of religion, like so that they could believe whatever they wanted, kind of thing.
Okay, see, we were told that, but then that was expounded on, saying
But
that
also, we were taught through a Christian, I was taught a Becca my whole life. So,
okay, yeah, I did ACE and Abeka. And yeah, so in Abeka in this school, I remember my teacher telling me that they left England because it was Catholic and they wanted the freedom to be Protestant. And then, in order to
okay.
get people to come, in order to get people to agree with them, they just decided to make it a broad statement and say
Oh,
freedom
okay.
of religion. And that's how they got America to be populated.
Interesting. I guess that makes sense.
So, well, it's so dumb. That's not true at all. Like, that's not true at all. That's so stupid.
We love our fake history.
Sure do. All right. Number 5. Ooh, this is another big one. A belief that former followers are always wrong for leaving, and there is never a legitimate reason for anyone to leave.
Hmm. Yeah, you're definitely looked down upon if you
Yeah.
leave.
You lose everybody. You lose everybody and
There's
everything.
definitely like a shunning without it being
Yes.
called like specifically, oh, we shun them. It's just like,
Right.
no, we don't speak to
It's
the
that
people if they
attitude.
don't go to church anymore.
Yeah. And even if they go to a different church, there's still that level. Even if it's a
Yeah, there
different
is. Yeah.
IFB church, like that happened to a lot of families that I knew at Faith. Like, they were talked down about because they didn't go to Faith specifically, even if they went to another IFB church, because nobody was as good as Faith.
Yeah.
But like, in my own experience, when I left when I was 18, I lost everything and everyone. My entire friend group, my entire support system. My parents were so mad at me. I wasn't allowed to see my younger siblings for a long time or be alone with them for years because I was a bad influence. I Everything was gone.
Yeah.
My entire life was gone. And I cannot even tell you the amount of times I cried myself to sleep at night because I just missed having people. I just missed
I mean, we
that
need like
illusion of
community.
community.
Yeah. And we
And
need
it's
support. Like we do need people in
yeah.
our lives and stuff. And like I just there's so much that goes on with like just shunning your family for stupid things, and I don't get it. Like, I'm sorry, but like religion should never take place over your family. Not ever. Like, you should like literally cherish like those closest to you, not push them away because of something ridiculous written in like a super old book.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. Like, we only live one life, and like especially like as an atheist, like if you don't believe that there's anything after this life, you have to really like cherish the moments that
Mm-hmm.
you have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no like tomorrow essentially, right? Of just like, oh yeah, one day we'll see each other again, whatever, right? No,
Right.
you live life to the fullest, and like you have to be cherishing all of the relationships that you have. And I can never respect someone that drops their family, their children for a religion, for church, whatever it is. Like, I just can't. I have no respect for you if
Can't
you just
fathom.
drop your kid for whatever reason, right? Like for not believing or not going to church anymore. Like, that's not a relationship breaker for me. Like,
No, it
it's
shouldn't be.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Like, if you want that child to come back to Christ or whatever, that's not the way to get them to come back. The way to
No,
get them
it's
to come
not.
back or whatever is to just love them. Love. That's the biggest thing, is showing love.
And this is another type, like, it's another form that hypocrisy takes in the church. Like, this saying one thing and doing another, saying that we love people and we want people to come to the church and we love everybody, blah, 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 blah. And then
But
as
then
soon as
talking bad
somebody,
about someone
even if
that
they leave
is poor.
respectfully, even if they leave respectfully and they sit there and be like, I disagree with A, B, and C. And for those reasons, I've decided that I'm going to find a church that better supports my values and my understanding of the Bible. That's incredibly respectful. And even if it's for that reason, they're still talked down on. You're
Hmm.
still told that they're a bad influence.
They're used as an example forever in
Yes. Yep.
sermons. And we also like look down upon people that are like literally coming in from the world, that are
Oh,
poor,
yeah.
that don't have like clothes that is fancy like ours.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's the same idea of like what we've said before, of just like they're not truly seeking like sinners and so on and so forth. They're
No.
just looking for like people just like them.
It's a cover. It's a cover for sure. And even if they say like, "Oh, yes, no, we definitely are wanting people to join the church that are sinners or whatever," it's because you want to convert them and it's because you want to change them to be exactly like you and fit your mold. And that's not love. That's control. It's not actual love.
So if you're constantly in the mindset of black and white thinking, you won't be able to ever like disagree with someone without like disowning them or whatever, right?
Right.
Like, part of humanity is like being able to like communicate and understand things and talk about things like that are deep, that make us think and wonder, and make us wonder like, why are we here? Like the deep conversations, like those are
Mhm.
things that it's just part of humanity. Like, we're all wondering like,
Right.
why are we here? What's the purpose of us? How did we become blah blah blah? There's all these questions. But like, if you cut off that idea of like being open to other people's opinions, you're cutting
Mhm.
off like yourself from humanity. You know what I mean? Like, you're
Yeah.
cutting off that the human part of you that is understanding and that is kind, because
Well, according to the IFB, that's what you're supposed to do. Is like all of those like human nature, which is sin nature in their eyes, like all of
mhm,
those are not of God and from God. So they encourage you to cut that off. Like, encourage is the wrong word. They tell you directly to
mhm,
get rid of those parts of yourself because they are not from God, they are from the devil.
yeah. And that's crazy because, like,
Super
I feel
crazy.
like there's the whole idea of like, if you come out atheist, you're instantly like a Satanist.
Oh yeah.
And those things do not
That's not
like,
synonyms.
it's,
Like
yeah. Um, but it's just like, I just don't get it. I feel like you have to have compassion, you have to have
mhm.
understanding, and like to be a kind human, whether you're Christian or not Christian, you have to be able to talk about things that you don't like to talk about. And like,
Mhm.
it's okay if you disagree. Like, you have to be okay with people disagreeing with you.
Yeah,
Like,
and they're really
period.
not. They're
No,
really
they're
not.
not.
Like the ability to have those conversations, even if it ends in yes, we'll agree to disagree, like the ability to have those back and forth conversations is completely lost
Oh, yeah.
in the IFB teachings. Like it is my way or the highway. It is so very black and white. It is if you disagree with me, I will convert you. End of story.
Hmm.
And there's
Yeah.
no room for that like back and forth discourse and discussion of like sharing ideas and learning and growing and respectfully disagreeing. Like there is absolutely none of that in the IFB, at least in
No,
my
no.
experience.
I remember there being like, I don't know if it was like church or classes in college, I don't even know, of like basically training you to try to like win conversations and like
Yes.
and win people over, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, say we were having a conversation and like I didn't agree with something you said.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go to this class and you take notes of like whatever they tell you, and then you come back later the next time we work together or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then you try this new technique of like trying to convince me. It's
Mm-hmm.
such a weird thing. Like, I don't know. It's very
I think
weird.
it's, you know, it makes sense to like want people to agree with you. I think that like everybody is like, oh, I think this and this makes sense to me. So naturally it should make sense to other people. I think that that's natural.
Hmm.
But that like
Hmm.
intensity of number one, they must agree with me or they are a bad person. And
Hmm.
in addition, if I don't get them to agree with me, I have failed as a Christian. Like both
Yeah.
of those are so detrimental.
Yeah, and I also feel like there's the whole like um idea of having control
Mm-hmm.
over everyone else. Um that causes a lot of issues and a lot of
Right.
conflict within those that believe and those that don't.
Yeah, very much so. All right, moving on. This one, short, sweet, and to the point. Number 6, abuse of members. How much time do we have? No, honestly, I think we can
Seriously.
probably touch on this really quick because that is a very obvious yes. I was
Hmm.
abused at church sexually. There are members that have been abused at church sexually as adults, as children, whatever. There are domestic violence cases in churches where men are never punished. Like the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And
And what do? They just
absolutely
they just
nothing,
pray. They just pray for these people,
which
send
is
them
absolutely
away,
nothing.
send them away, say that like they said sorry and say that God forgave them. They
No.
don't do anything. They don't do
They
anything.
don't. No, they don't do anything. They like to think that they are, and they have way too much respect for pedophiles. They have way too much respect for domestic abusers, and the fact that they are just like, oh, well, you're clearly not a good fit for this church here, so you can go somewhere else and just continue your bad behavior because nobody ever smacked it out of you. Like, not that I'm condoning corporal punishment, but some people just need to be smacked. If you're gonna abuse a child, you deserve to be smacked at the very least. Like, it drives me absolutely crazy how little is done about abuse. Okay, so number one, abuse of members, it exists, it happens, and number two, it's not dealt with. I think we've said before, like there will always be abusive people around. It is how we deal with it. It is how adults and
Hmm.
people in charge deal with it that makes all the difference. And if you refuse
Yeah.
to deal with it, if you refuse to have those uncomfortable conversations that you just aren't having,
and make those decisions, which I understand are hard decisions. Like, if you find out that somebody who you respect, that somebody who you love is beating their wife behind closed doors, is molesting children, that's hard. That is hard to hear. That's hard to understand. And I understand that completely, that it is really difficult to have those conversations, but they need to be had. Things need to be done about it. Just because it's hard does not give you an excuse not to do anything about it. It does not give you an excuse not to protect people that can't protect themselves, especially women and children in the environment that you created can't protect themselves.
And I'd like to say also,
Welcome to my TED Talk. Sorry.
if you're a pastor that has covered shit up, abuse, like every single person that they abuse after that moment, it's on you.
That's on you. That is all
It's on
on
you.
you.
So I'd like to see you in hell. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's where you're going, according to them. So enjoy that, Christy.
Yeah.
Yep.
I welcome all of you. I'll take you all down with me.
But, like, no, honestly, like, when you choose to, like, refuse to take action and you choose to protect the people that are hurting people, whatever they do next because of your indifference, apathy, laziness, whatever you want to call it, that is your fault, brother. Like,
I mean, literally, how many stories? How many stories do we have?
Mine! Literally mine!
Yes.
Like,
how many stories?
My abuser
went on to abuse someone else.
Yes. Multiple people, by the way.
They're literally
multiple
just
people.
Forgiven. Literal slap on the wrist. Not even that.
Yep.
Sent to a different church. Abuse someone else. The
Sent
same
away
thing
for a
happens.
year.
Exactly. It's disgusting.
It is super,
and
disgusting.
I have no respect for pastors that just turn a blind eye and act like they're somehow doing the right thing. Like, it makes me so sick.
It really does. It really does. It gets me really heated. Like, I get really angry about this stuff. I need to calm down.
And guess what? We have more and more and more stories coming out. It's literally nonstop.
Since we have started this, we have had half a dozen people so far individually, like actual names, reach out and want to share their stories. Not to mention at least a dozen more we know of that are in the works. So we really, really hope to be able to bring that soon. We obviously want to be respectful of the victims and, make sure that they have the time and the space to process everything before going public. But, the amount that we have been hearing, and I think this last week, I think we've been on calls every day this week with somebody who's wanting to do something like that. And, it's sick. It makes me so sick. And I'm angry. For a long time, I was sad. For a long time, I was really sad. And I was just, this is such a bummer. And I wish it wasn't like this. But now I'm angry.
Yeah. I'm glad you are.
I'm glad I am too. Because honestly, I'm getting a lot more done now that I'm angry.
It helps.
Yeah. Okay.
But, yeah. Abuse definitely happens within the church, within the IFB. It definitely does.
Oh, yeah. All right, number 7. This is funny. Records, books, articles, or programs documenting the abuses of the leader or groups. Let us pray. Literally just came out. I know some people in the IFB who are actually a part of the IBLP as well. And, I mean, everything that's coming out about Bill Gothard and the Duggars, I check. That exists. I mean, literally us doing this podcast fits that description. Yeah. Number 8. Literally everybody I have talked to that is either, still in church but out of the IFB or just out of the IFB completely has agreed with this one.
Followers feeling they are never able to be good enough.
Oh my God, yeah. That's definitely a thing that we all feel is like unworthy forever.
Yep. It's it's not good enough in so many different, like, I am not good enough for God. I'm not good enough for myself. I'm not good enough to be a part of ministry. I'm not good enough for anything. And I have been told that I am not good enough for my entire life for so many reasons. Like, oh, I don't dress good enough. I don't act good enough. I don't speak good enough. I don't sing good enough.
I feel like you
I'm
might
not.
relate to this, but I I remember feeling like in high school that like my race had to do with it. But
Mm-hmm.
then after leaving high school and going to college and having people dislike me for not really for things that not for things that I did, but for the person that I was. And that was a huge, huge pain for me. Like
Yeah.
when it wasn't only like basically like me trying to be as perfect as possible and that really not mattering anymore. And it like would switch over to basically like them not liking my personality and somehow my personality being the issue,
Yeah.
right? And like when you're already feeling like you're unworthy and not good enough, and to hear that, like, oh no, it's not just like the things that I do that they don't like, or like the way that the race that I am, the way that I look. It's my actual like the actual person that I am that they don't like.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to try anymore, how to be perfect anymore.
You
If,
can't.
yeah, if they don't like
Perfection is
me.
unattainable for even for the people that look perfect, because like I will tell you, just from my perspective, you looked so perfect. Everything that I knew about you, everything that I saw you do, I was like, I want to be like Christy. Like, and we didn't
Hmm.
even go to the same school or the same church. Like, that was how perfect you were in, like, in my perception.
Yeah.
So even the people that are put on a pedestal and and that are seen as perfect, it's not attainable.
Yeah, I mean, I literally like what? I was representing the school, like the college I went to.
Yeah.
And on those tour groups, I was told that basically I was like, I had a dominating personality. And
Hmm.
like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I felt like I couldn't speak anymore
Yep. Yep.
without just fully being judged.
Yeah,
And
it's one thing when it's something that you feel like you can, like, easily change or control. Like, oh, your skirt's not long
mhm,
enough. Your shirt's not
yeah,
high enough. Your hair's the wrong color. You can't have that piercing. Like, those are, not that they're okay, but those are easy to
hmm,
fix. If you want to
yeah,
fix them, they're easy to fix. But when you are told that the core of who you are is problematic, it's, you just want to give up.
yeah.
And
I mean, I did. I literally
yeah,
did. Like after
same.
college, I gave up. I had
Surprised you
never
lasted that long.
felt, well, yeah, I mean, I was very, very dedicated and very like
Yeah.
committed to my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And the pain of like those situations of like them judging the actual person and the core like person that I was, and like my personality basically not fitting their cookie cutter world.
Mm-hmm.
I I've never felt that much pain before. like, and failure. Like, I felt
Yeah.
like I was a failure.
Yeah. Because you had done everything right. Like, you had done
Mhm.
everything right. And
Yeah,
to still be told after all of that work and all of that, like, effort that you're still not good enough.
yeah. Like, no matter what I did, it didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And that was a huge reason why I kind of started losing my faith,
Yeah.
because I just felt like it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. It doesn't matter how kind you are or how much you do for God. Like, I could
Mm-hmm.
literally do everything, and it doesn't matter because of my personality that, like, literally God gave me,
Mm-hmm.
according to you,
Mm-hmm.
isn't like what you want or what you need for whatever, like for your school or for your representation. Like, I mean, I went on to do two more tours.
Yeah.
So I was still on the teams and stuff, but it was just like me being pulled aside for like literally my personality and for saying things that sounded like, I guess, too domineering or something. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we also talk about the difference between a man and a woman having like a big personality or a dominating personality? Like as women we're told to shut up and we're told to
mhm,
like rein it in and um meekness, like we're told to be meek. And men, if you are loud or if you are charismatic or if you are like funny or any of those kinds of things, like, he should be a preacher someday. He's got a great personality for it. It's taken so differently. It's such a positive in a man, and it's
oh
such
yeah.
a negative attribute
Yeah,
in a woman.
having any type of leadership when you're
Oh
a
my god,
man
yes.
is like the number one thing, but if you're a woman with leadership skills,
Which
they
I
don't
will
want
say,
you.
I'm I'm not good at bragging on myself because I'm not supposed to, but I have decent leadership skills. I'm a leader in my job. I'm a supervisor. I have 13 employees directly under me.
Mhm,
Like, I enjoy leadership. It's fun for me, and I'm pretty good at it. And I did not allow myself to even think about leadership until I was like, I don't know, 23, 24. Like, until I
mhm,
was like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's okay for me to be good at that because it wasn't for a long time. I couldn't, like, for me to want to be in charge of something or me to want to, like, you know, just do anything or, I remember wanting to be captain of the volleyball team, and that was a problem. Like,
mhm,
because I wanted to be captain, it was an issue. Because I wanted to
mhm.
be, like, a leader, it was a problem. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, the misogyny is crazy, and I just, yeah, like, men can lead and men can be loud, but women have to be silent. And if you
Yep.
have like a strong personality, you're like looked down upon or considered to be
You need
a
to be
rebel.
broken. You need, like, it's seen as a problem that needs to be corrected. And
Mhm.
that's not okay.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, it did break me when they said
Yeah.
those things.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I felt like, I mean, I was literally in a bus or a car or whatever van with this tour group, and knowing that like basically they all spoke about me behind my back. I felt so isolated, and I felt like I couldn't speak anymore.
Yeah.
And I felt like the leaders had taken like a side, and it wasn't mine for sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it broke me. Like, I literally would call Nathan like every day sobbing. Like, I would have to keep it in all day. and not speak in the van at all
Wow.
because I was afraid of like what they were going to think of the things that I said or whatever, right? Like I felt like I was being judged for literally just breathing.
But from their
And
perspective, you were taking what they said and being compliant. From their
yeah.
perspective, that wasn't hurtful, that was constructive, and
No,
you were
I
behaving
almost like literally
appropriately.
called I almost called my mom like wanting to just come home because
Yeah.
it was that like bad for me. Um, but I didn't, and I I just feel like that really started everything for me of just like I'm not good enough, I'll never be good enough.
Yeah.
Like who I am isn't good. Um, I'll never be like so and so. I'll
Yeah.
never be
Yep.
whatever, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, I feel like it just
So
sucks
yeah,
when you're not
not
accepted and you're not
no. And I mean, I
like,
was not well liked. Like I was not accepted. I was not, I wasn't popular in the IFB standards. I
mhm,
just wasn't. And it sucked. It was really really lonely. It was really lonely.
yeah.
Anywho, that's number 8. Check. So far, I think all of these, yes, yes, yes to all. Number 9. This one is very interesting. I have a couple of things on this. Number 9, a belief that the leader is right at all times.
Mm,
So I have a couple thoughts on this. Yes and no. It depends on the situation. If you disagree with something with the pastor, but other people agree with it, then you are wrong and the pastor is right. If
I would
uni
say
Go ahead.
I would say yes to this because God tells the pastor,
Yeah.
like uses the pastor and tells the pastor. So if you go against the pastor, you're going against God.
Yes. But then also there's this kind of phenomenon that happens where if the pastor makes a mistake and it's universally considered a mistake, like, I mean, we're saying mistake in a very light sense. Like if the pastor commits a crime or abuses somebody, like obviously, and it's something that the pastor did wrong, then the narrative is, oh, well, he's just a man. You can't expect him to be perfect all the time. You need to give him
Mm,
grace. He's doing this
yeah.
because we're not praying for him enough. Like, so yes, I believe that this applies, and also like it goes even deeper than that, because no matter what, nothing is his fault.
Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, that's problematic. So number 10, last one, a belief that the leader is the exclusive means of knowing truth or giving validation. So the IFB loves to say that they are not this because they compare themselves to other denominations, primarily Catholics, that say, "Oh, you like okay, so in the Catholic structure, the pope or the priest is, you give your confession to them, they interpret God's word, you and like in other religions you have no need to read the Bible because the pastor, priest or whatever clergy person will do it for you." And that is something that the IFB is very adamant about not believing. They like, at least in my experience, my pastor preached several times that, oh, if somebody tells you that you can't read the Bible for yourself, then that's not a good church. And I agree with that. If somebody tells you you can't read the Bible for yourself and interpret it for yourself, that's not a good church. But again, it's hypocrisy because just because they say something doesn't mean that they actually practice it. Because if you are if you interpret scripture one way but the pastor interprets scripture another way,
the pastor is correct because he has
Hmm.
the divine inspiration, ordinance from God, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not like it's the hypocrisy for me. It really is. Like they'll say that, oh no, we don't do this, but they actually do.
Hmm. And then they also do the whole thing where it's like, oh, only this church, like maybe that church was like full of hypocrites, but our church isn't.
I know. Oh my goodness. I yeah, I've talked to a lot of current IFB people. And I mean, not even necessarily recently, just like throughout the time that I've been away from the church. Like I have been told that so many times. Well, just because the church hurt you doesn't mean that
Yeah.
God hurt you. Or just
Hmm.
because this church said something doesn't mean that all churches are like that. And
Hmm.
that's true, but the intent that they are saying that with is to get you to reconvert, is to get you to go
Yeah.
back, is to get you back under that umbrella, back into the cult.
Well, yeah,
That's the
that's what they tell
intent with which
like
they're saying that.
unbelievers. They tell unbelievers like that basically that it wasn't God, it was the church. And
Mm-hmm.
it was the people.
And then still give us shit for not going to church. Because we can't expect all the people to be good. We can't expect all the people to be, people are just people. We're all sinners, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, that's
I mean,
great.
we're all sinners is great when you're a man, but like when you're a
I
woman,
know.
let's be honest, it doesn't work that
But
way.
but like and I agree with that. Yeah. Like if there's a church with bad people, why would I go back?
Hmm.
Why would I just accept that? Why would I surround myself with bad people?
Yeah.
No. Why like their argument is so flawed because they say that, just because the people are bad doesn't mean that the church is bad or just because of a few rotten apples, whatever. But their argument is so flawed because, again, they're telling on themselves, agreeing that those people are bad, and saying that that shouldn't affect your decision to go to church or not go to church. I have enough respect for myself to not surround myself with people that will hinder my walk with God as a
Hmm.
Christian. Again, if you're not a Christian, this doesn't apply to you, whatever. But for me, as a Christian, as somebody who still believes in God, I have enough respect for myself and my relationship with God not to put myself in a place where that is going to be hindered and that is going to be like not progressed.
Hmm.
And for me, that's church.
Yeah.
That's church. I am not going to go to church because it does nothing. It hurts my relationship with God.
Hmm.
It just does.
Especially like IFB. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just so I feel like it's so negative. Like I feel like after I left, there was just like a lot of negativity like kind of like lifted off of me because I feel like we view everything as evil and good and it's a lot to think about all the time
Mm-hmm.
and to think about having to like save everyone around you and like this whole like idea that somehow we will be able to save everyone and I don't know like the savior complex of just like
Yeah.
all of us basically being like little saviors and all the time and having to worry about what people think about you all the time or how people perceive you all the time.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot. It can be a lot. And I feel like after growing up in like a space like that, I've definitely had way more anxiety and depression because of it. Like
Yeah.
I know it's really, really affected me mentally.
Yep.
Um, I had anxiety before, like everything. Like I've always had anxiety, but it's definitely worsened. And it doesn't help that I feel unworthy and um like I'm not enough kind of thing.
Still. Still. I feel those things still so much.
Yeah.
Like
I don't know if that's ever going to go away, to be honest. Like, I've been in therapy for almost 2 years now. Like, I have tried to do a lot of work on this, and I don't know if I will ever feel like I'm enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think.
Probably not. I mean,
Yeah.
I can function well enough. Like, I can, you know, manage my life well enough without feeling like I'm enough. But it would be a lot easier if
Yeah.
if I didn't believe that about myself and I didn't feel that way about myself. It'd be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we've concluded that the IFB is definitely a cult.
Yes.
Um, and I just hope that this video helps you kind of understand like how toxic the IFB and churches can be,
Mm-hmm.
and to just research things for yourself and to look into.
Ask a lot of questions, even if they tell you not to. Ask a lot of fucking questions.
Mhm. Yeah,
You
I
got to
just hope
figure it
that
out for
it
yourself.
helps you. It helps us open up like a channel of like being able to communicate about this and like why we do believe it's a cult, why we don't, and allowing an open conversation.
Yeah, and if you disagree, if you don't think the IFB is a cult after all this, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Like genuinely, honestly. And I strongly maintain that I am not going to persecute or punish somebody for not believing what I believe or not
Hmm.
agreeing with me,
Oh
because
yeah.
that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do. So genuinely, if you feel differently, please leave a comment. We would love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to have a conversation with you and talk through things like respectful adults. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, we welcome that.
Yeah, we love a good conversation
We do.
and um yeah, the ability to disagree and still be friends and
Yeah,
have a friendly conversation.
absolutely. So, thank you for joining us on this episode of Cult Confessions. Coming up, we have lots of more guests lined up, as we've discussed. We have a few other episodes planned where we're going to be reacting or reviewing some excellent marital advice given by some IFB pastors, and some more fun stuff like that. So tune in. Follow, like, subscribe, hit all the buttons, please and thank you. And then if you would like to have a conversation with us or discuss sharing your story, please email us at cultconfessionskjv@gmail.com. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Share your story.
If you have been affected by religious trauma or abuse, we want to hear your story.
Even if you're not ready to share publicly, we would be happy to listen and support you on your journey, free of judgment or pressure.
Please email us at cultconfessionskjv@gmail.com to get started.
We believe you.